Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm excited, but I'm a little under the weather. Been having a really crazy allergy morning this morning after a really not a great night of sleep last night. And so I tell you that with the full intention of just kind of letting you know that I am not at my best today, but I'm here to try my best. And so I'm going to give you everything I have to give, but it's not exactly what it normally would be. So please bear with me. I like to show up here and I like to be honest. And it's also, checking in with myself in this way, right? And this is a practice that I use with all of my clients, right? I ask people specifically, and it's a practice that I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh and the work that he does and his many followers and adjunct programs and stuff do. But what Thich Nhat Hanh and his programs do is they ask you to check in with yourself, but check in with your weather, right? Every time I say that to somebody for the first time, I say, "Hey, how's your weather today?" They look out the window, I'm like, no, not that weather, your weather. Checking in with how you're feeling as an overall sense, but in terms of a weather event. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is so brilliant and why it really, really works very well, right? Number one, a weather event is temporary, right? It's very impermanent. We all know that, right? Especially if you live out here in Colorado or anywhere in the sort of middle of the country, right? They have these sayings out here that says, if you don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes, right? I come from New York City originally, but then upstate New York, and there's, the weather there can settle in for a few days at a time, right? But here it's like, it's always changing. But in any case, right, weather is always changing. Whether it takes a few days to change or it takes a few minutes to change, it is always in a state of flux. So when you check in with your weather at any given moment, you are really getting kind of a snapshot of how you're feeling right then and there, right? And again, describing it as a weather event helps us to see it as something that's constantly changing. Right. And it's, constantly changing in the sense that it doesn't necessarily have to go from sunny to cloudy. Right. It could be, very rainy and windy at one point, and then maybe the sun starts peeking through, but it's still very windy and stormy feeling, but there's sunshine. That's the other thing about another thing about the weather is that there's a lot of different facets to it. Right. And so it offers us a really wide and broad sense of descriptors that we can use for our emotions, which is something that's going to be very, very helpful for us, right? Pardon me. And then also, one of the benefits of looking at the internal sort of state as the emotional internal state as a weather event is that, if you take I'm sorry, there's two more things I want to say. Another one just popped into my mind. But so the next benefit is that, we don't yell at the weather, right? Like if you go outside and it's not what you thought it was going to, you could be disappointed that it's not what you thought it was going to be, right? Like maybe you thought it was going to be nice and warm because it's sunny, but it's still cool and you got to wear a jacket. You were hoping to go around without a jacket today, so you can maybe feel a little bit like, oh, it's a bummer. And that's something we should work on, right? Like that acceptance of what you find is definitely the next level, right? But even if you don't accept the weather, there's very few people who stand there and yell at the sky, right? Like, how can you do this to me? You have to change, right? So it's something that we don't necessarily blame, right? And so the same concept would happen when we feel our emotions. A lot of times, we might feel that we're at fault for feeling a certain emotion, right? We might feel as though, gosh, I should be happier, and that's kind of like going out and yelling at the clouds, right? Like it doesn't really help anything, right? And then so finally, the last benefit of this checking in with the weather is to do it, especially if you do it several times throughout the day. What you're going to find is that, again, as I said a few minutes ago, each time you check in with your weather, you're taking sort of a snapshot, right, of what the weather is right now, right? And what this will help you to understand, later on or over the course of time is that you might feel as though you're having a bad day, right? It might be like a couple of things happen in the morning that just kind of set you into this kind of headspace, and things got like things kind of went from bad to worse in the morning, and then it just gets lost, right? We tend to get lost in that emotional sort of experience, right? And so by checking in with the weather, say 4 or 5 times throughout the day, spreading them out, what you might most likely will find at some point is that you see that even though you feel like you're having this bad day, right? In this moment, I'm actually feeling like there's some rays of sunshine coming through. I'm actually feeling like I've got some hope or like I feel like I can do this. Like I feel like I can lick this day. I can get through it, even though you thought like an hour ago that it was like the worst day ever, right? So the idea then is to get that sort of, concept that our emotions are constantly changing, right? And so at the retreat center that Thich Nhat Hanh runs is in France, and it's called Plum Village. And at Plum Village, they have clocks, everywhere there, I shouldn't say, I don't know how many clocks they have, but everywhere there is a clock, every 15 minutes, every clock in the whole compound chimes. Right. And the idea is that at that time, when you hear the chimes, the idea is to what everybody does in the retreat center is they just stop what they're doing and they check in with themselves just like that. Right. And I'm going to tell you why this really applies to what I want to talk about today. But before I do that, I want to remind you all, in about 3 weeks, it might get pushed back a little bit. I was talking to somebody who's helping me with some marketing stuff, and he's like, we really need more time. So we're in negotiations. So I might do one group now, another group later. We're going to see. But I've got this really exciting program coming up called Anger Transformed, right? And if you or someone you love, or even someone you don't love so much, is experiencing chronic anger, as I said yesterday, sometimes you won't even know that you're experiencing chronic anger. But if you feel like, you've got, relationships that are suffering, and you've got holes in your walls, and you've got a dinged bumper that you keep looking at because of that time that you lost your temper and you slammed on the brakes and hit something or something like that, right? If you feel like you feel like everybody's out to get you, right? Not in a paranoid way, but just in the sense like, how can everybody around me be this dumb, right? If those are the kinds of things that you're asking yourself, right? Chances are you are experiencing chronic anger. And and we're going to go really deeply into why that's an issue today, or one of the reasons. There's many reasons why it's an issue, but one of the reasons why it's a specifically insidious issue, okay, we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, I want to just let you know that if you even if you even think you might have some issues around this emotion of anger, right, which is like many other emotions, or actually it's pretty unique in the sense that it's actually very much like the stress response, and a lot of the things that are happening in your body when you're experiencing anger are exactly the same as the stress response. In fact, it's fight or flight, right? That's the anger emotion. So in many ways, the emotion of anger is the emotional manifestation of stress, right? So it gets a little complicated, right? But the reason why it's so insidious, right? And the reason why it doesn't allow us to see it is because of what we're going to get into today. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress again. I do that a lot, and especially with little sleep and lots of sneezing. If you even think that maybe this is something that would be good for you, I want you to book a call with me, okay? The call, it doesn't even have to take a full 45 minutes. If you only want to talk for 5 or 10 minutes, we can do that. But I would love to hear from you because, as I'm going to explain today and pretty much every day for the next couple of weeks, anger is a specifically and especially difficult emotion to handle. And I'm going to get into why right now, okay? But before I do, if you're interested in booking that call, right? Or even if one person actually emailed me the other day, said, save me a spot in this program. Like, I don't care when it starts, but just save me a spot. So if you want me to save you a spot, email me. But if you'd like to talk about this and see if this is something that is going to benefit you, or if it would be something that's not for you, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, that's what I do, right? I talk to people and I'm honest with them all day long. And so I'm going to put the link in the description to click and book a call on my calendar, right? It's this really cool system that we have that not we, I mean, the world has this system that's it's a link. You just click on the link and immediately you go into my calendar, right? So you're going to see a picture of my calendar, right? I think it gives you like 6 days or something like that. So over the course of those days, you're going to see where I'm busy and where I'm not. Now, it doesn't tell you what I'm doing in my meetings, but it tells you when I'm available. So when you click a day, let's say next Wednesday, right? You click that day, right? Along the right side, it's going to pop up different times, right? Those times represent the 45-minute slots that I have available. So all you have to do is pick one of those spots, click on it, you go into the next screen, you enter like your email address, your name, first name, last name, and just answer a question or two about like where you heard from me or what is this about the anger program, stuff like that. And then that's it, right? And then I will get in touch with you when it's time for our call. And I'll email you right away. I mean, I think there's actually an automatic email that goes out through the calendar, says, hey, we're booked, great. And then I'll reach out a couple days later, just say, hey, looking forward to it. Anything you want to talk about, email me ahead of time if you want, blah, blah, blah. It's a great process. and a lot of people have taken advantage of this process, and a lot of people have greatly benefited from it. So if you're interested in learning more about this upcoming program, or any other programs that I'm offering, or if you just want to talk about anything, like whatever it is, this is a free call for you, okay? Now, again, I've been mentioning this, a lot of people are taking me up on these calls, which is beautiful, right? I'm in love with it, right? But the other thing is, though, that I'm getting pretty busy. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to I'm probably just going to have like a special link for these calls and just restrict it to like one day. So right now, if you're interested in this, right now is the most flexible and wide open time to book this call. All right. I'm not trying to do like a FOMO thing here, right? I'm not about that. I think you all know that about me, but I'm just being honest with you because I want you to get the time that you're looking for. All right. All right. So as I said, anger is a very special emotion, right? Let me tell you first a story that I just reread this story. It's a wonderful old Zen tale that really describes anger quite well, like really, really well, and it describes the struggle with anger, and it also describes the benefit of regulating our anger. All right. So the story goes as this. So there's a samurai warrior, right? Who's a particularly, big and mean samurai warrior, right? And he's storming across this field. I'm sorry, back up a little bit. There's a monk who's in meditation. And he's, a lot of monks meditate with their eyes open. And so as he's meditating, he sees a figure approaching him. And he comes out of his meditation and he squints and looks at this figure that's approaching. It's obviously a samurai. He can see the swords coming out and he's, he's walking with intent. And as he's approaching, the monk can see the scowl on his face and he can see how, like this samurai is already very angry, right? And he comes storming up and the samurai says, "Monk, I want you to tell me all that you know about hell and heaven. I need to know about heaven and hell, and I need you to tell me." And so the monk pauses for a moment looking at the samurai, and he says, "Why should I give you the time of day? You came in here, you didn't even introduce yourself. You treat me so rudely. I don't know why I should even talk to you, much less teach you anything. And plus you smell like a 1,000 cows, and I would rather you just leave my monastery right now." The samurai got so enraged, he whipped out his swords and he held the sword over his head, ready to just strike this monk down. And the monk looks up at him, he says, "That is hell. Immediately, the hands started trembling. Like he realized that he was in the grips, the samurai did, that he was in the grips of this anger, and that he was totally out of control, and he had no way of feeling any kind of, happiness or well-being in this state. He was completely at the mercy of this emotion. And in that moment, he realized that the monk had risked his life to show him this, that he could never have explained it so effectively as the samurai felt it right now. And so the samurai dropped his sword. He drops down to his knees and holds his hands together in gratitude and bows down to the monk and says, "I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for this compassion that you've shown me." And the monk says, "That is heaven." Nice, huh? I love that story. And that's really what anger is, right? And anger is specifically this way, and unlike any other emotion, right? There's no negative emotion that is so gripping. The positive emotions tend to be, right? Like the positive emotions is when you get like goosebumps, you get like tingly and like, ooh, I'm so happy. I'm just like joyous and over, when you get excited about something, right? It's like a physical, beautiful thing, right? And it will, like anger, it will change the way you see things when you're in a positive emotion, right? And so, but anger, more than any other negative emotion, right, is going to impact the way you see the things that are in front of you and the way you assess your own sort of behavior and the way that you assess your own risk levels. Okay, that's how insidious this emotion can be. Okay, let me explain to you what I mean. Okay, so first of all, the title of this talk today, right, is going to be I'll see it when I believe it, right? And I did not misspeak on that, right? Normally we say the term I'll believe it when I see it, right? But with something like anger, it is completely the other way around. It is I will see it when I believe it, right? Which is to say that when we're in this state of anger, okay, we are more likely to see the actions of others as being the thing that causes us anger, right? So let me explain that a little more clearly. So if you are in a place of anger, right, and I'm going to just give you a really simple and basic and pretty obvious example, right? But if you're in a place of anger, right, and somebody, you ask somebody a question and they give you an answer, like let's say you say, how was the soup today at the restaurant? And the person says, it was good. If you're feeling angry, right, or if you're experiencing anger at that moment, right, or as an overarching thing, which we're going to get into that too, how it can be a very chronic issue. But if in that moment you're dealing with some anger emotion, then somebody saying something just like good with no real facial expression, right? It's a very neutral kind of expression. You're going to perceive that as being hurtful, right? You're going to perceive that person as saying something so horrible to you that they're trying to hurt you, right? And you're going to react in that way, right? So you're going to say like, oh, what the hell's wrong with you? Why you got to say it like that? Why you got to snap at me like that, right? And that's the perception issue. Now, here's the other thing. The perception of your own actions is completely changed as well, right? In a specific and really dangerous way, right? That you no longer see risk the same way. Okay? Meaning when when you're in that place of anger, right? You're not going to think like, well, that's my boss and I probably shouldn't yell at that person, right? You're not going to realize that that's not a good thing to do. Right now, again, these are very basic and obvious examples, right? If you and I talk about specific instances in your life, I can point out how this is happening to you, right? I mean, it's very, very easy to do that because it's so real and so apparent once you get to look at it, right? So not only are you going to perceive things your outside stimuli as inaccurate, right? But you're also going to perceive the risk level of your expression as different. And there's more. You are going to always be expressing yourself from the place of anger, right? Like you are more likely to be short. You're more likely to be short-tempered with people. You're more likely to be, edgy in your voice, but not in a way that you're intending, right? You're more likely to do these things without your purposeful intention, right? And you're less likely to realize that you're doing it. Now, all of this is directly derived from the emotion that you're feeling. Okay, and this is different from most other emotions, right? When we're feeling shame or we're feeling guilt, right, we don't have that same sort of change to our perception, right? And now that perception, by the way, is a universal concept, especially when it comes to mindfulness practices, right, and heartfulness practices. If you recall, way back when, okay, I've told you about something that the Buddhists refer to as the three poisons. Now, again, I am not a Buddhist practitioner. I am not a Buddhist teacher, and this is not a Buddhist program of any kind, right? But all of the practices that, all of mindfulness in general is derived from Buddhism, right? And all of the modern applications of mindfulness are also derived from Buddhism. So it stands to reason that we could see connections, okay? And so the three poisons, right, are mental states. And this comes from what is known as Buddhist psychology, right? So this is not a philosophical or a religious kind of concept. It's very much scientific, right? As scientific as it was 2,500 years ago, right? The three poisons, okay, are negative mental states, which are always going to provide and result in negative emotions. Okay, so anytime that you're living in any one of these or any combination of these three negative mental states, you can't feel anything but a negative emotion. Now, I want to tell you something again about, and this is something that has been confirmed with modern psychology and neuroscience, right? That the Buddhists knew or thought they knew back then, but it's been confirmed that you cannot experience a negative mental state and a positive mental state at the same time. It doesn't work like that. It literally just doesn't work like that. Okay? So that's important. Right? That's really important because as we cultivate the positive mental states and the positive emotions, then we stay away from the negative mental states and the negative emotions that they produce. Right? Now that doesn't mean positive, toxic psychology here. Right? And it also, time out, back up, okay? This is the time where I should have said this before, and I'm going to say it now, that in no circumstances is it a good idea to suppress your anger or to avoid your anger. Okay, this is really important that you understand that, okay, because it's dangerous. It's very dangerous for your physical, mental, and emotional health. Okay, so please, please, please promise me that you won't try to do that, all right? So when I say cultivating positive mental states and positive emotions that come from them, I don't mean to banish. It's not a holding away this. It's a welcoming this, right? So and we can cultivate this with compassion practices, with kindness practices, with gratitude practices. Right? So as we practice, it's almost like you're taking up so much room in your mind with the positive mental states that you just can't get into those negative mental states. Now, again, this doesn't mean you can cultivate and practice compassion and gratitude and loving kindness all day, every day. It does not mean that you're never going to feel negative emotions or negative mental states. Right? It does not mean that. What it means is that the more you practice the positive mental states and the positive emotions, the more resilient you are going to be. Right? So that when you do fall into that place of a negative emotion, right? By turning on the news and seeing somebody, seeing a politician doing something that just makes you so angry, right? You're going to feel that anger. You're going to have an opportunity to transform that anger into a positive motivation, and that's what my course is going to be about, right? But you also then have the resilience to come back to your normal mental state, which is a positive mental state, because that's the other thing, right? That the natural mental state that exists is not one of the three poisons, right? The natural mental states that we exist are open, non-judging awareness, acceptance, and letting go, right? Those are the ways that your mind wants to operate. But the three poisons are delusion, clinging, and aversion. Sorry, that took me so long. I was just processing things. The delusion, though, is the one that we really want to talk about here, right? That's the one that really applies to the anger. Because delusion, now we're not talking about a delusory state like like you're mentally unwell and you need to be, kept in a place so that you're safe, right? Like that. I mean, of course, we could be talking about that, right? That's the ultimate evolution of delusion, right? But delusion can be on very, very small levels too, right? And that's where I'm talking about with the anger, right? That when we experience anger, we are experiencing delusion as part of the anger. Okay? So this is important, right? Because when we're in that place, we don't know we're in that place, right? Like you can't the last person to understand that they are insane is a person who is insane, right? Like you can't understand it. It's like they talk about, ask a fish about water and a fish doesn't know what you're talking about, right? Because it's breathing and living in water all the time. Right. And so that's why this is really important. And so to do the work of non-judging awareness and to develop emotional intelligence, which was what that monk taught the samurai, right? Of seeing like, okay, I'm angry right now. And now my mission is to get, again, not in a way that is suppressing the anger, but I want to do what I need to do to move myself back towards the place of homeostasis, right? Which is where my heart rate is normal, my blood pressure is normal, my different systems in my body are all working properly. Like it is my duty to get back to that place for my own survival. Right? It has nothing to do with whether I feel good or whether I'm being mean to someone. I mean, of course, all that matters, but that's not the point. The point is that your physical health relies on you being resilient to get yourself from that place of anger, hyper arousal to that place of homeostasis. Right? And that's the way in which stress and anger are really pretty much two sides of the same coin. I mean, they're pretty much the same thing that are happening in your body, right? Now, again, what happens is, right, that the more we become angry, and this is true for stress as well, that the more we become angry, the more angry we, the more easily we go into that anger. And that means that every aspect of the anger becomes chronic. Okay, meaning that you never see things clearly, right? Not just when you're in this eruptive rage, but all the time, right? Because what you're doing is in the same way that the stress response works, right? You're creating neural pathways. You're actually destroying brain cells in certain parts of your brain in the area of self-control and self-awareness. You're taking away your ability in these areas with the emotion of anger. And the more often you get into that emotion of anger, the more those neural pathways become, they're not permanent because neuroplasticity tells us we can always change it, but they become semi-permanent, right? They're like your personality trait. Right? That's what a personality trait is. It's the way that your neural firings happen in the answer or in the response to every single stimuli. Right? And so if you're always responding with anger, then you become an angry person. Right? And that means that every situation, every experience, every connection, every conversation, every task at work, every gesture, every, everything in your life comes through that filter of anger. And I'm telling you, I've been there. And I want to help you to break free from this prison that you're living in. That's what I want. And I am here to do that for you. And I can do that in 12 weeks, starting in a few weeks from now. So if you're interested, let me know. Okay, remember that link is in the comment, in the description, and or you can just email me back and just say, hey, I need to talk to you. We'll work it out, right? If the link is too complicated or whatever, just email me, okay? Let's get into a conversation, okay? Thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for listening. I wish you well, and I mean it. If any of this resonates with you, or if you think, wow, you know what, my uncle, I think he's an angry guy. Get me on the phone with your uncle. Let me talk to them. One of the beautiful things about, the way that I work is that I'm able to really connect with a lot of different kinds of people, right? Like, I got the long hair, I can put on a tie-dye and connect with the hippies as much as I can connect to people and talk about football, right? So please, if you're wondering, like, well, I don't know if my uncle's going to be into it with meditation and all that, I have gotten some of the some people who you would never think could get into this work. I've gotten them into this work by connecting to them on their level. So please give me a chance. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I am so grateful that I didn't sneeze throughout this podcast, and yeah, that was awesome. So thank you again. I hope to talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.